So a couple of key things to note in a question like this. Now, we know that based on our triple T document for the math, we say in step one, don't look at the answer options right away. They'll only confuse you. However, it can be helpful to look at the answer format. So notice in the answer format, none of these have a negative in front anymore. So they must have distributed it. Now, when talking about distributing a negative or any monomial for that matter, because this is really like a -1, notice you only distribute it to one of the three quantities, not all of them. So let's look at an example. Let's say I had 2 times x times y. We know we would just multiply the 2 by one of them and then multiply that by the other one. We wouldn't say 2 times x plus 2 times y because there wasn't a plus sign between the x and the y. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is if I have an odd number of negatives, whether it's just one negative or 3 negatives or 5 or 7, etc., it becomes negative because any two of the three multiply to get a positive, and then multiplying it by the remaining negative makes it negative. However, if you have an even number of negatives, whether it's 2 or 4 or 6, the two negatives become a positive and you get a positive answer. Now, the reason that's significant is we need to look at what's occurring with the distribution of that negative. In this example, as well as B and D, clearly they distributed it to the a-1, making the -1 a +1 and the positive a negative a. Now, if we do that, we either have to keep these the exact same, which none of the options for A, B, or D do, or we'd have to multiply both of these by another negative. Why? Well, this negative's already been distributed, right? So that makes it so it's equivalent if we just kind of keep these as is. But since none of the options have that, they did something a little bit tricky. They decided to introduce 2 more negatives and distributing this one to the b-1 and this one to the c-1. Well, that makes the b-1 a +1 minus b and the c-1 a +1 minus c, still keeping that 1 minus a. So that matches perfectly with option B.